I am 32 years old. My husband, Liam, is 34. For 5 years, we lived by a strict budget. We cut out everything that was not essential. No fancy dinners, no expensive vacations. We drove old cars and wore clothes until they were thin. We did all of this for one reason. We wanted to buy a house, a real home, with a yard for a dog and a room for a future child. We had a special savings account just for the down payment. I watched it grow every week. It was a number that represented our shared dream. It was a symbol of our hard work and our partnership. My sister Ava is 2 years younger than me. She never understood our discipline. Ava lived her life in the moment. If she wanted something, she bought it. If she ran out of money, she would call our parents. They always helped her. They called it supporting her spirit. I called it enabling her. We were two very different people. I was the responsible one. She was the fun one. Our parents loved us both, but they worried about me and celebrated her. The day everything fell apart was a Saturday. It was sunny and warm. I was helping Ava move. She had just bought a house. I was surprised she could afford one. Her job was part-time. She taught yoga classes a few times a week. It was not a high-paying job. But our parents had said they were helping her, so I assumed they had given her a large sum of money. I tried to be happy for her. It was hard. Seeing her get the thing I had worked so hard for, seemingly without any effort, stung. But she was my sister. So I showed up with boxes and a smile. We were in her new kitchen. It was beautiful. It had granite countertops and brand new stainless steel appliances. It was much nicer than the small apartment Liam and I shared. I was feeling a sharp pang of jealousy. I pushed it down. I told myself to be a good sister. "This place is amazing, Ava," I said, trying to sound genuinely happy. She smiled, a wide, triumphant smile. "I know, right? I got everything I wanted." I nodded and picked up a box labeled dishes. It was heavy. As I set it on the counter, she said the words that shattered my world. She said it so casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. It was so sweet of Liam to help me out. I was so worried the bank would say no. I stopped what I was doing. "What do you mean? How did he help?" "Oh, she said, waving a dismissive hand. "He co-signed the mortgage for me. My credit is not the best." I stared at her. The air in the room felt thick and heavy. I could not breathe. "He what?" "He co-signed," she repeated, a little slower this time, as if I were simple. "My new house. Your husband co-signed it." I felt my body go cold. A co-signature was not a small favor. It was a massive financial commitment. It meant that if Ava missed a payment, Liam and I would be legally responsible for her entire mortgage. It would hang over our own credit, making it harder, maybe impossible, for us to get a loan for our own house. "You're joking," I said. My voice was a whisper. Ava laughed. It was a light, airy sound that made me want to scream. "Why would I joke about that? He was a lifesaver. The bank needed a stronger application." I felt a wave of nausea. He had done this. He had tied our financial future to my irresponsible sister, and he had not said a single word to me about it. Not one word. The betrayal was a physical pain in my chest. It was sharp and deep. I needed to talk to him. I needed to hear it from him. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I walked out of the kitchen and onto the new, empty back porch. I did not want Ava to hear this conversation. I pressed Liam's name on the screen. My heart was pounding in my ears. He answered on the second ring. His voice was cheerful. "Hey, honey, how's the move going?" he asked. I could not bring myself to make small talk. I had to know. "Ava just told me something," I said. My voice was flat. "She said you co-signed her mortgage." There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was just a second. But it was long enough for me to know it was true. In that second of silence, I felt the floor drop out from under me. "Oh," he said. His voice was different now. It was cautious. "Look, Chloe, It's complicated. It doesn't sound complicated, Liam, I said. It sounds very simple. Did you or did you not co-sign for a house for my sister? He sighed. It was a sound of frustration, as if I were the one being difficult. Yes, I did, but it's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I could hear my voice rising. I fought to keep it steady. Liam, that ties up our credit for decades. That legally binds us to her debt. How is that not a big deal? It's just a formality, he said, his words coming faster now. Ava said the bank just needed a stronger applicant on paper to get the loan approved. She's going to make all the payments. We won't have to do anything. He was parroting her words. He was using her logic. It made me feel sick. And you did this without talking to me? You made a decision that affects our entire future without even a conversation? I was going to tell you. He insisted. I was just waiting for the right time. Ava and your parents, they said you would overreact. I felt a fresh wave of betrayal. It was not just him. It was all of them. They had talked about me. They had decided how I would react. They had decided I could not be trusted with the truth. They had managed my emotions by hiding things from me. It was a conspiracy of my own family against me. They all went behind my back, I thought. They decided how I would feel and then hid it from me. My decision was instant. I had to get away from them. I have to go, I said, my voice cold and distant. Chloe, wait, Liam said. Don't be mad. We can talk about this when I get home. There's nothing to talk about right now, I said. And I hung up the phone. I did not want to hear any more excuses. I did not want to hear any more justifications. I walked back inside. Ava was unpacking a box of wine glasses. Our mother was there now, too. She was beaming as she looked around the spacious room. Isn't this wonderful, Chloe? My mother said, her eyes shining. Our little Ava, a homeowner. I looked from my smiling mother to my smug sister. I could not pretend anymore. The happy mask I had been wearing all morning cracked and fell away. I just spoke to Liam, I said, my voice tight. Ava's smile faltered for a moment. She glanced at our mother. And? You had no right to ask him to do that, I said, my voice shaking with fury. You had no right to go behind my back and involve my husband in your finances. Ava put a wine glass down on the counter with a sharp clink. Her expression hardened. Oh, relax, Chloe. It's just a signature. It's not like he's actually paying for anything. It makes him legally responsible, Ava. I shot back. It makes us legally responsible. It puts our own plans, the plans we have worked for years for, in jeopardy. Did you even think about that? God, you're always so dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. It's always about you and your precious plans. For once in your life, can't you just be happy for me? I have a house. This is a good thing. My mother stepped between us. She put a hand on my arm. Her touch felt like a brand. Chloe, stop it, she said in a low, warning tone. You are making a scene. Your sister has a beautiful new home. We should be celebrating this moment, not fighting. Her words were meant to calm the situation, but they only fueled my anger. She was taking Ava's side. Of course she was. She always did. In her eyes, Ava's happiness was the most important thing, and my feelings were just an inconvenient disruption. Celebrating? I said, pulling my arm away. You want me to celebrate the fact that my husband and my sister and my parents all conspired behind my back to make a massive financial decision that I have to live with? You want me to celebrate that? You are being selfish, my mother said, her face stern. Family is supposed to help family. Liam understood that. Why can't you? I looked at their faces. Ava, defiant and entitled. My mother, disappointed and scolding. They did not see what they had done. They did not see the betrayal. They only saw me, standing in the way of their perfect, happy picture. I felt something inside me break. It was the part of me that always tried to keep the peace, the part that always swallowed my own feelings for the sake of family harmony. That part was gone now. "I can't do this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. I walked past the stacks of boxes, past the signs of Ava's new life that had been built on a foundation of my own. I did not say goodbye. I walked out the front door and did not look back. As I drove away from that house, the anger began to cool, and a cold, hard certainty took its place. The story did not add up. Liam's excuse that it was just a formality felt thin. Ava's casual dismissal felt rehearsed. My family's united front felt like a wall they had built to hide something. I could not trust what they were telling me. I had to find out the truth for myself. The line had been crossed. This was not just about a signature on a document anymore. It was about a fundamental breach of trust. I drove home to an empty apartment, our small, cramped apartment, and I started to think. My mind was clear for the first time all day. I knew what I had to do first. I needed to see the numbers. I needed to see our money. When I got back to our apartment, the silence was deafening. It was the same space Liam and I had shared for years, but it suddenly felt foreign, like the home of a stranger. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture we had picked out together seemed like a prop from a life that was no longer real. The trust that had held it all together was gone, and I could feel its absence in the very air I was breathing. My first instinct was to check our finances. It was more than an instinct. It was a compulsion. The story about the co-signature was bad enough, but Liam's evasiveness and my family's defensiveness made me suspect there was more. Something they were still hiding. I walked over to the small desk in the corner of our living room and opened our laptop. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed in the web address for our bank. I navigated to the login page. I knew our username and password by heart. I typed them in and hit enter. The page loaded, showing our checking account, our credit card balance, and the one that mattered most, our joint high-yield savings account. This was our dream fund, the down payment account. I had a specific number in my head, the exact balance it should have been. I had checked it just last week. The number on the screen was not that number. My heart stopped. I leaned closer to the screen, thinking I must have misread it. I read it again. And again. It was wrong. It was not a little bit wrong. It was not off by a few $100s. It was short. It was short by $75,000. A sound escaped my throat, a choked gasp. $75,000. It was a huge portion of our savings. It was years of sacrifice. It was countless nights of eating pasta instead of ordering takeout. It was the old, sputtering car I drove to work every day. It was gone. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. A bank error? A system glitch? It had to be. There was no other explanation. With a shaking hand, I clicked on the transaction history for the savings account. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the list of deposits, the small interest payments, and then I saw it. 3 weeks ago. A wire transfer. The description read, "Wire transfer to West Coast Escrow Services." The amount was exactly $75,000, and the authorization note next to it was clear. Authorized via online banking portal, user ID, Liam G. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs. He had not just signed a paper. He had actively taken our money. He had logged into our account, the one we had built together, and he had sent a massive chunk of our future to an escrow company. For her. For Ava. The betrayal was no longer an abstract feeling. It was a concrete fact, displayed in stark black and white on the computer screen. The co-signature was a lie of omission. This was an act of theft. He had stolen from me. He had stolen from us. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen. The anger was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow emptiness. The man I had married, the man I had trusted with my life and my future, had done this. And he had looked me in the eye for 3 weeks and said nothing. He had let me continue to plan, to dream, to save, knowing that he had already given a piece of that dream away. The sound of his key in the door made me jump. I did not move from the chair. I just sat there, waiting. He walked in, his expression a mixture of anxiety and forced cheerfulness. "Chloe, you're home," he said, dropping his keys on the small table by the door. "Listen, about earlier, I know you're upset. We can talk it through." I did not say anything. I just turned the laptop screen toward him. He walked over, his smile fading as he saw what was on the display. He saw the savings account balance. He saw the wire transfer. His face went pale. "Chloe," he started, his voice soft. "Let me explain." I finally found my voice. It was quiet, but it was as hard as steel. "It wasn't just a signature, was it, Liam?" He looked from the screen to my face, his eyes pleading. "It was for the down payment. It's a loan. She's going to pay it back." "A loan?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You gave my sister, a person who has never successfully paid back a $50 loan in her entire life, a $75,000 loan from our house fund? And you did not think that was something you should mention to me?" "It wasn't like that," he said, his hands fluttering nervously. "Your parents were going to help her, but they were a little short. They promised they would make sure she pays it back. They guaranteed it. It's a family matter, Chloe." I laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. "It stopped being a family matter the second you logged into our bank account and transferred our money without my permission. That money was half mine, Liam. Our savings were our shared future. You did not give her a loan. You gave her my future. You're making this bigger than it is," he said, his voice gaining a defensive edge. "We will get the money back. Your family would not let us down. They gave me their word." I looked at him, and for the first time I saw him clearly. I saw a man who was so desperate for my family's approval that he was willing to sacrifice his own wife's trust. He was so afraid of confrontation with them that he had chosen to betray me instead. He did not get it. Or maybe he did not want to get it. He had made a choice. He chose them over us. He doesn't get it, I thought. Or he doesn't want to. He chose them over us. The discovery of the missing money changed everything. This was no longer just a marital dispute or a family disagreement. This was a profound violation. The lie about the co-signature was designed to hide this much larger lie. They had all known. Ava, my parents, and Liam. They had all known that he had taken our money, and they had all agreed to keep it a secret from me. My mind started to spiral. Why did Ava need $75,000 for a down payment? That was a 20% down payment on a $375,000 house. How could she possibly afford the mortgage payments on a house that expensive with her job? How had a bank even approved a loan that size for her? Even with a cosigner. The story they had constructed was falling apart. The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. And with that realization, a new feeling began to bubble up through the hurt and the betrayal. It was a cold, quiet anger. It was resolve. I was not going to be the victim in their story. I was not going to let them get away with this. I was going to find out exactly what happened, and I was going to get my money back. I was going to get my future back. The first person I called was my best friend, Sarah. We had known each other since college. She was smart. She was practical, and most importantly, she was a lawyer. I needed a clear head, and my own was swimming with anger and pain. I needed someone who was entirely on my side. I explained everything to her over the phone. I told her about Ava's announcement, the confrontation with Liam, and the $75,000 wire transfer. I did not cry. My voice was eerily calm as I laid out the facts. When I finished, there was a long silence on her end. Then she said, "Okay, wow. Chloe, this is really bad." "I know it's bad, Sarah," I said. "I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do," she said, her voice firm and professional. It was the voice she used when she was talking to a client. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. First things first, you need to protect yourself financially. Right now, do you have any bank accounts that are in your name only? I have an old checking account from before we were married, I said. I barely use it. Good, she said. Go online right now and change your direct deposit from work to that account. Any money coming in from this point forward should go to you and you alone. Next, take half of whatever is left in your joint checking account and move it to your personal account. You are entitled to half. Her instructions were clear and direct. They gave me something to do, a way to channel my swirling emotions into action. I did exactly as she said while we were still on the phone. I logged into my work portal and changed my payroll information. I transferred half of the small amount left in our joint checking account. It felt strange, like I was dismantling my own life, piece by piece. Okay, I said when I was done. I did it. Good, Sarah said again. Now, about the $75,000. This is very serious. Co-signing was reckless of him, but the unauthorized transfer from a joint asset is a huge problem. That's a massive breach of trust, both marital and financial. He keeps saying it's a loan, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He says my family promised they would make sure Ava pays it back. Let me guess, Sarah said dryly. There's no paperwork. No, I admitted. Of course not. It was a family thing, done on a handshake and a promise. Then it wasn't a loan, Chloe, she said, her voice softening slightly. Legally, without a signed promissory note or a loan agreement, it was a gift. It was a $75,000 gift that you did not consent to giving. And that is a major issue in a marriage. Her words hit me hard. A gift. Liam had not loaned our money. He had given it away. So what do I do? I asked. How do I get it back? You need information, she said. You need to know exactly what he signed. He is a co-borrower, which means he has a legal right to see every single document associated with that mortgage. He needs to request a full copy of the loan application and all closing documents from the bank. You need to see what he agreed to, what Ava declared, everything. That made sense. I needed to see the paperwork. The official documents would tell the real story, not the version my family had spun for me. After I hung up with Sarah, I felt a little stronger. I had a plan. But before I confronted Liam again, I needed more information. I decided to do a little digging on my own. I went online and searched the public property records for our county. I typed in Ava's new address. The information came up instantly. The recent sale price was listed right there. I stared at the number. It was even higher than I had calculated. The house had sold for $450,000. My mind reeled. Even with the $75,000 from us, that was a massive mortgage. There was no possible way Ava could afford the monthly payments on her salary. It was mathematically impossible. This confirmed my suspicion. Something was very, very wrong with this entire picture. The numbers did not add up. The story did not add up. I decided to call my mother. I needed to see what her story was now that I knew about the money. I took a deep breath and tried to make my voice sound calm and reasonable, not like the betrayed and furious daughter I was. She answered on the first ring. Chloe, honey, I was so worried. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom, I said, my voice even. I'm just trying to understand what happened. I need you to be honest with me. There was a hesitant pause. About what, dear? About Ava's house, I said. Liam told me he gave her $75,000 from our savings for her down payment. He said you and Dad were going to help her, but were short. My mother sighed. It was a long, weary sound. Well, yes, that's true. We contributed what we could from our savings. That money from you and Liam was a blessing. It's what got her over the finish line. We're also grateful to him for stepping up. Grateful. The word was like a slap in the face. She was grateful that my husband had taken money from our shared account without my knowledge. He told me it was a loan, Mom, I said, pressing on. He said you promised to make sure Ava pays it back. Of course, dear, she said, her voice light and dismissive. And she will, in time. You know how Ava is with money. You have to be patient with her. Family helps family. You shouldn't be making such a fuss about this. In time. I knew exactly what that meant. It meant never. It meant they expected me to just forget about it, to absorb the loss for the sake of Ava's happiness. Grateful? I thought. She's grateful that my husband stole from me. And in time means never. The conversation made it clear. They were all on the same page. Their story was unified. They were going to stonewall me with platitudes about family until I gave up. But I was not going to give up. My next step was the bank. Sarah had said I couldn't get the documents myself, but I had to try something. I needed to see if I could get any information at all. I drove to the main branch of the bank that held the mortgage. It was a large, imposing building. I walked in and asked to speak with someone in the mortgage department. I was directed to a man named Mark. He was in his late 40s with a kind face and a professional manner. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. My name is Chloe, I started. My husband Liam recently co-signed a mortgage for my sister Ava. I have some concerns about the loan, and I was hoping you could give me some information. He listened patiently. When I was done, he gave me a sympathetic but firm look. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said, but due to federal privacy policies, I cannot discuss the details of a loan with anyone who is not a named borrower on the loan documents themselves. I understand that, I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. But my husband is a borrower, and our joint funds, money that I earned, were used for the down payment. I believe I have a right to know what we are now liable for. I do understand your frustration, and I sympathize with your position, Mark said politely. But my hands are tied. The law is very clear. Unless your name is on the mortgage application itself, I am legally prohibited from disclosing any information about the loan to you. I felt a wave of defeat. It was another dead end. I had come all this way for nothing. I stood up to leave, my shoulders slumped. As I turned to go, I made one last comment, more to myself than to him. I just don't understand how this was even approved, I muttered. My sister's finances are a complete mess. She barely has an income. Mark hesitated for a moment. He clearly felt sorry for me. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. He leaned forward slightly. Ma'am, I really can't say anything specific, he said in a low voice. But what I can tell you is that every loan application is thoroughly vetted. All I can say is that the application we reviewed for this loan was very strong. The primary borrower's stated income and assets were more than sufficient to qualify. I stopped. I turned back to face him. The primary borrower? I asked. That's my sister Ava. Yes, he confirmed. And her stated income was sufficient? More than sufficient, he repeated. I thanked him and left the bank. His words echoed in my head all the way to my car. The primary borrower's stated income was more than sufficient. That was impossible. Ava was the primary borrower. Her income was a pittance. She worked a few hours a week. She had no significant assets that I knew of. So how could her application have been very strong? The only possible answer was that she had lied. She had lied about her income on a federal loan document. And if she had lied, that meant she had committed fraud. Bank fraud. And my husband, my trusting, naive husband, had signed his name right next to hers. He had not just co-signed a loan. He had co-signed a crime. Primary borrower? I thought as I sat in my car in the bank's parking lot. That's Ava. Her stated income? She's a part-time yoga instructor. What income? The phrase stuck in my head like a burr. The primary borrower's stated income. It was the key. It was the piece of the puzzle that did not fit. And I knew if I could figure it out, the whole ugly picture would become clear. How could Ava, my perpetually broke sister, have a strong income? It was a question that consumed me. I drove home, my mind racing through every possibility. Had our parents given her a secret inheritance? No, they would have lorded that over me. Did she win the lottery? No. She would have been on a yacht by now, not just in a new house. The answer had to be something else, something she was hiding. I started thinking about Ava's life over the past year. On the surface, nothing had changed. She still taught her yoga classes. She still went out with her friends. But as I thought harder, I started to notice small things, details I had dismissed at the time. I remembered a conversation from a few months ago. We were at a family dinner and Ava was showing off a new designer handbag. It was a brand I knew cost thousands of dollars. I had asked her how she could afford it. She had laughed and said, "Oh, I have a little side hustle. It pays surprisingly well." At the time, I had rolled my eyes. I assumed she meant she had picked up a few extra yoga clients or sold some old clothes online. It was typical Ava exaggeration. But now, the phrase side hustle took on a more sinister meaning. What kind of side hustle could possibly pay well enough to show a strong income on a mortgage application? When I got home, I went straight back to the laptop. This time, I went to Ava's social media pages. I never paid much attention to them before. Her posts were always a stream of filtered selfies, inspirational quotes, and pictures of expensive meals. It had always seemed shallow and a little sad to me. But now I looked at it with new eyes. I was not just looking at photos, I was looking for clues. I scrolled back, month by month. There was the expensive handbag. There was a weekend trip to a luxury spa. There were photos of her at fancy restaurants, the kind Liam and I never went to. The captions were always vague, feeling blessed, or living my best life. It did not add up. The lifestyle she was projecting online was completely at odds with the life she was supposedly living. It was a fantasy. Or I realized with a growing sense of dread, it was real, and it was being funded by something she did not want anyone, especially me, to know about. I needed to talk to Liam again. My first angry confrontation had yielded nothing but excuses. This time, I would be different. I would be calm. I would be strategic. I would approach it not as an angry wife, but as a concerned partner trying to solve a problem. When he got home that evening, the tension in our small apartment was so thick you could cut it with a knife. He was trying to act normal, but he was jumpy and avoided my eyes. I waited until after we had eaten a silent, miserable dinner. I sat down on the couch across from him. "Liam," I said, my voice quiet and even. "I went to the bank today." He looked up, his eyes wide with alarm. "Why would you do that?" "I told you I would handle it." "I wanted to understand," I said, ignoring his panic. "I spoke to a loan officer. He couldn't tell me much, but he did say one thing that I can't stop thinking about. He said the primary borrower's application was very strong. He said her stated income was more than sufficient." I watched Liam's face carefully. He looked confused. "Okay, so that's good, right? It means the loan is secure." "No, Liam, it's not good," I said, leaning forward. "The primary borrower is Ava. What income did she declare on that application? How could her income possibly be described as strong?" He shrugged, a gesture of helplessness. "I don't know, Chloe. I told you I didn't really look at the details. Ava and her mortgage broker handled all the paperwork. I just came in at the end and signed where they told me to sign." "You co-signed a mortgage for nearly $500,000 and you didn't read the application?" I asked, my feigned calmness starting to fray at the edges. "You authorized a $75,000 transfer from our savings and you didn't read the documents?" "Ava said it was all standard stuff," he said defensively. "Her broker had everything prepared. He was a professional. He said my signature was just a formality to strengthen the file." A new piece of information. A broker. "Who was the broker?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "What's his name?" Liam's eyes darted away from mine. "I don't remember his name," he mumbled. "He was just some guy your dad knows." He was lying. I could see it in his eyes. He was hiding something. Or even more terrifying, he was so completely out of his depth that he truly had no idea what he had done. He had just blindly trusted them. He had walked into a trap, and he had dragged me in with him. He's lying, I thought. Or he's the most naive man on earth. Either way, I'm in this alone. I knew I would get no more information from Liam, and my parents had already shut me down. They were part of the cover-up. I needed to find another way in. I needed to find out more about this side hustle. I thought about who in our extended family might know something, who was close enough to Ava to hear her gossip, but not so loyal that they would refuse to talk to me. My mind landed on our cousin, Jenna. Jenna was a few years younger than us. She liked Ava's fun-loving personality, but she had always been kind to me. She was a bit of a gossip, but she had a good heart. She was my best bet. I sent her a casual text message. "Hey Jenna, long time no talk. How are you?" She replied almost immediately. We exchanged pleasantries for a few minutes, catching up on small talk. Then I made my move. "By the way," I typed, trying to make it sound like an afterthought, "I was at Ava's new house the other day. It's insane. I'm so confused about how she could afford a place like that. Did she get a new job or something?" Jenna's reply came back with a string of laughing emojis. "OMG, I know, right? That place is palatial. You know Ava. She always lands on her feet." I held my breath and typed my next question. Seriously, though, how is she doing it? She must be making a fortune. There was a short pause before her next message came through. "Didn't you hear about her new business? She's been doing it for almost a year now." My fingers trembled as I typed back. "No, what business? She never tells me anything." Jenna's reply appeared on my screen. "She calls herself a consultant or something. Basically, she's a companion for wealthy older guys. Like, she goes to dinners with them, is their date for events, that kind of thing. She says it's like being a life coach, but for rich, lonely men. She told me it pays crazy well." I read the message once. Then I read it again. A consultant. A companion for wealthy, older men. The vague euphemisms did little to hide the truth. It sounded like she was a sugar baby. She was being paid for her time and her company by rich men. I felt a wave of disgust and a strange, cold clarity. This was it. This was the side hustle. This was the source of the strong income. But how could you declare that on a mortgage application? Was that even legal? The pieces were clicking into place, and the picture they were forming was uglier than I could have ever imagined. My family had not just hidden a loan from me. They had actively covered up the source of Ava's illicit income. They had knowingly used that money, and my money, to perpetrate a fraud. My father's words came back to me. "She has a successful consulting business. It's very lucrative." He had known. He had used the same euphemism as Jenna. And Liam had said the broker was some guy your dad knows. My father was not just a passive observer. He was involved. He had helped set this up. The betrayal had deepened yet again. It was a bottomless pit. I decided to call my father. I was done with hints and gentle questions. I was going to confront him directly. He answered the phone with a gruff, "What is it, Chloe?" "Dad, I need to know the name of Ava's mortgage broker," I said, my voice hard. "We've been over this," he said, his voice rising in irritation. "Why are you still digging into this? The deal is done. Just be happy for your sister." "I can't be happy for her, Dad," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Because Liam took $75,000 from our savings for her, and now I find out that the entire loan might be based on fraud. So I'll ask you again. What income did Ava declare on that application?" He was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and furious. "She has a successful consulting business, I told you that. It is a very legitimate and lucrative business. Your problem is that you're jealous. You've always been jealous of your sister because things come easily to her and you have to work for everything." The accusation of jealousy was their favorite weapon. They used it every time I questioned Ava's behavior. It was designed to shut me down, to make me feel small and petty, but it did not work this time. "Consulting?" I shot back, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Is that what you're calling it now? Dad, Do you have any idea what your daughter is actually doing for money? She is a grown woman, he snapped. Her business is her business. It's not our place to judge. All that matters is that she was able to show the income to the bank and get the house. Now, I am ordering you to drop this. You're going to tear this family apart. He hung up the phone. I stood in the middle of my living room, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. He had ordered me to drop it. He had confirmed everything without admitting anything. They were all in on it. They were all protecting her. They had sanctioned her lifestyle. They had helped her launder the money through a fraudulent mortgage application, and they had used my husband and my life savings to do it. The hurt I had been feeling curdled into something else. It was a cold, hard resolve. This was no longer about getting my money back. This was no longer about a family squabble. This was about justice. They had treated me with contempt. They had used me. They had underestimated me. And I was going to make them regret it. The fight was just beginning. I knew I needed proof. Hard, undeniable proof. My conversations with my family were a dead end. They had their story, and they were sticking to it. Accusations and arguments would get me nowhere. I needed the documents. I needed to see the loan application that Liam had so carelessly signed. I called Sarah again. I told her about my conversation with my dad and my suspicion that Ava's income was from being a companion and that the entire application was fraudulent. Okay, Chloe, this is escalating quickly, Sarah said, her voice serious. If you're right, and she submitted false income statements to a federally insured bank, that is a felony. And because Liam co-signed it, he could be considered an accomplice, whether he knew it or not. The word felony sent a chill down my spine. This was even more serious than I had thought. So how do I get the application? I asked. The bank won't give it to me. They won't give it to you, Sarah corrected me. But they have to give it to Liam. He is a co-borrower. He has a legal right to a complete copy of every document he signed and every document that was part of the loan file he signed off on. He just has to ask for it. This was the key. Liam was my way in. He was the weak link in their chain of lies, and his fear was the tool I was going to use. I had to make him understand the danger he was in, the danger he had put us in. That evening, I did not wait for him to settle in. The moment he walked through the door, I was ready. I did not raise my voice. I spoke to him in a low, grave tone that was far more terrifying than shouting. Liam, we need to talk, I said. He was already on edge, and my tone made him freeze. I spoke to Sarah today. My friend. The lawyer. His eyes widened. Why? Why would you do that? This is a private family matter. It stopped being a private family matter when it potentially involved a federal crime, I said calmly. I let that hang in the air for a second. What are you talking about? He whispered, his face losing all its color. I'm talking about bank fraud, Liam, I said, looking him directly in the eye. I have very strong reason to believe that Ava lied about her income on the mortgage application you co-signed, that she submitted fraudulent documents. No, he said, shaking his head in denial. No, Ava wouldn't do that. Your dad, he said she had a business. What business, Liam? I pressed. Did you see any proof of this business? Did you see a business license? Tax returns? Or did you just take their word for it? He was silent. He had no answers. He had just blindly trusted them. If I'm right, I continued, my voice cold and precise, and you signed that application, you are complicit in that fraud. It doesn't matter if you knew or not. Your signature is on the paper. We could be prosecuted. We could face fines, even jail time. We would lose everything, Liam. Our savings, our jobs, our future. Everything. The reality of what I was saying finally seemed to penetrate his wall of denial. He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. No, he muttered. No, they promised me. They said it was all safe. They lied to you, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. This was the moment to turn him. They used your trust to protect themselves, but we can still protect ourselves. If I'm wrong, then we have nothing to worry about. But we have to be sure. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with terror. How? You are going to call the bank tomorrow morning, I instructed him. You are going to speak to the mortgage department, and you are going to request a full, certified copy of the entire loan package. The application, the supporting documents, the closing statements, everything. As a co-borrower, you are legally entitled to it. Tell them you need it for your personal financial records. He hesitated. He was terrified of the truth, but he was more terrified of the consequences I had laid out. If the paperwork is all legitimate, I said, offering him a sliver of hope. If her income is from a real business and everything is above board, then I will drop this. I will apologize for doubting them and for doubting you. But if it's not, we need to know. We need to have that proof to protect ourselves. The fear won. He nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I'll do it. I'll call them in the morning. The next few days were agonizing. Liam made the call. He spoke to Mark, the same loan officer I had met. Mark was professional and processed the request without any issue. He informed Liam that it would take a few business days to compile the certified documents and that they would be sent to our address via courier. So we waited. We barely spoke to each other. We lived like ghosts in our own apartment, circling around the massive, unspoken secret that lay between us. Liam was a wreck. He was pale and withdrawn. He jumped every time the phone rang. He was finally starting to understand the magnitude of what he had done. I felt no pity for him. This was a mess of his own making. I was just focused on the package. It was my only hope. On the third day, it arrived. A large, thick envelope delivered by a courier who required a signature. Liam signed for it, his hand shaking. He brought it inside and placed it on the kitchen table as if it were a bomb. It's here, he said, his voice barely audible. I took a deep breath. Let's open it. We sat down at the table together. I slit the envelope open with a kitchen knife and slid the thick stack of papers out. The top page was a cover letter from the bank. Beneath it was the loan application itself. My heart was pounding. I did not bother with the first few pages of personal information. I flipped straight to the section on the borrower's income and employment. There it was, in black and white. Primary borrower, Ava. Employer, Ava Management Consulting. Title, sole proprietor. And then I saw the number. The number she had listed as her annual income. It was a staggering amount. It was more than Liam and I made combined. It was a blatant, outrageous lie. But the lie itself was not the proof. The proof was in the pages that followed. Attached, as supporting evidence of her income, were the documents she had submitted. There was a profit and loss statement for her business, showing incredible earnings. It looked official, but I knew it had to be fake. There were no expenses listed, only pure profit. And then I saw them. The bank statements. They were supposedly from a business account in her company's name. They showed large, regular deposits coming in every month, tens of thousands of dollars. The source of the deposits was listed, but it was not a company name. It was the name of a private trust. I recognized the name of the trust. I had seen it in the society pages of our local newspaper. It belonged to a very wealthy, very powerful, and very publicly married real estate developer in our city. This was it. This was the proof. She had not even bothered to hide it well. She had submitted bank statements showing she was being paid by a rich man's trust fund and had passed it off as business income. This was the fraud, clear as day. I felt a grim sense of victory. But as I continued to flip through the pages, my victory turned to ice in my veins. Tucked into the very back of the thick packet, almost hidden among the miscellaneous closing disclosures, was a single sheet of paper. The heading at the top read, Gift Letter. I picked it up. It was a formal, legally binding declaration to the bank. I read the words, and the world tilted on its axis. The letter stated that Liam, the co-borrower, was providing a financial gift to Ava, the primary borrower, in the amount of $75,000. It explicitly said that the funds were a gift and that there was no expectation of repayment. It was a non-repayable gift, intended to assist with the down payment and closing costs. And at the bottom of the page, clear and unmistakable, was Liam's signature. I slowly lowered the paper and looked at him. He had been watching my face, his own filled with a dawning horror. "You signed this," I said. My voice was quiet, dead. "You signed a letter for the bank, a legal document stating that our $75,000 was a gift." Liam stared at the paper as if he had never seen it before. I don't remember that," he stammered. "There were so many papers to sign. The broker, he just had a stack of them. He pointed and said, 'Sign here. Sign here.' He said it was just to explain to the bank where the down payment money was coming from. He told me it was standard procedure when a family member helps out. I looked from the fraudulent income statements to the gift letter, and then to my husband's terrified face. The full, monstrous truth was finally clear. "So it was never a loan," I said, the words falling like stones in the silent room. "Not even in your mind. You knew she was never going to pay it back. You signed a document declaring it was a gift. You looked me in the eye and you lied. You have been lying to me from the very beginning." He started to protest, to make excuses, but I held up a hand to stop him. I did not want to hear it. The lies were irrelevant now. I had the truth. I had it in writing. He didn't just enable them, I thought, a cold, hard certainty settling into my soul. He was an active participant in the lie. The entire foundation of my marriage is a fraud, just like this application. The betrayal was complete. It was not just about the money anymore. It was not just about the house. It was about the fundamental truth of my life. My husband, my sister, my parents. They had all been part of an elaborate deception, and I had been the target. But now I was not the target anymore. I was the one holding the weapon. This stack of papers was not just proof of their lies. It was my power, and I knew exactly how I was going to use it. I had the proof. The stack of certified documents sat on my kitchen table like a monument to my family's betrayal. The forged income statements, the doctored bank records, and the damning gift letter signed by my own husband. It was all there. I spent the next 2 days in a state of cold, quiet fury. I did not yell at Liam. I barely spoke to him. I was moving past the hurt and into the realm of strategy. This was a war, and I was preparing my battle plan. Sarah, my lawyer friend, helped me formulate the plan. I explained what I had found in the loan documents. "This is worse than we thought, but it's also better for you," she said, her voice grim but steady. "The fraud is so blatant that it gives you incredible leverage. They've handed you the gun and pointed it at their own heads." "What do I do with it?" I asked. "You have 2 options," she explained. "The nuclear option is to go to the authorities. You report the fraud to the bank and potentially the FBI. Ava goes to jail. Liam likely gets charged as an accessory. Your family is destroyed publicly. It's clean, but it's brutal." I thought about that. The idea of sending my own sister and husband to prison was horrifying, even after what they had done. "What's the other option?" I asked. "The other option is you use this leverage to get exactly what you want," Sarah said. "You don't report them. You hold the threat of reporting them over their heads to force them to make you whole. It's messier, but it keeps you in control and avoids burning everything to the absolute ground." I knew which option I had to choose. I did not want to destroy their lives completely. I just wanted them to face the consequences of their actions. I wanted them to feel the same powerlessness they had tried to impose on me. I wanted my money back, and I wanted my life back. "Okay," I said to Sarah. "Option 2. How do we do it?" We spent an hour on the phone, game planning the confrontation. It had to be in person. It had to include everyone. They had acted as a group, so they would face the consequences as a group. The next morning, I sent a group text message to my mother, my father, and Ava. I added Liam to the chat so he could see it. "I need everyone to come over to my apartment tomorrow evening at 7, I wrote. "We are going to resolve this house issue once and for all." My mother replied almost instantly. "That's a wonderful idea, dear. It's time we put this all behind us." Ava sent a simple, "Fine." They thought I was surrendering. They thought the responsible, peacekeeping Chloe was finally going to give in, accept the loss, and apologize for making a fuss. Their arrogance was so predictable. They had no idea what was coming. The next evening, I prepared the stage. I made a pot of coffee. I set out mugs on the counter. I wanted everything to seem normal, disarming. The thick envelope with the loan documents sat on the coffee table in the center of the living room. It was the only thing out of place. Liam was a ghost in his own home. He knew what was about to happen. He had asked me, his voice trembling, what I was going to do. "I'm going to fix the mess you made," was all I had told him. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents and Ava standing there. They had expressions of patient tolerance, as if they were indulging a difficult child. "Hello, Chloe," my mother said, stepping inside and giving me a brief, stiff hug. "I'm so glad you've decided to be mature about this." My father grunted in agreement, and Ava swept past me without a word, her eyes already scanning the apartment with a look of disdain. They all sat down on the couch. Liam sat in an armchair in the corner, as far away from them and from me as possible. He looked like a man on death row. My mother started. "Now, Chloe, we know you've been upset, and we understand. It was a surprise. But what's done is done. Liam did a wonderful, generous thing for his family, and we should all be celebrating Ava's new chapter." I let her finish. I let the silence settle in the room for a moment. Then I picked up the envelope from the coffee table. "I agree we should talk about what's done," I said, my voice calm and clear. "We need to talk about this." I slid the stack of papers out of the envelope and placed them on the table in front of them. "This is the mortgage application for Ava's house." Ava rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh my God," she sighed. "Are we still on this? I thought we were here to move on." "Yes, Ava, we are still on this," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "Specifically, we're on the part about your consulting business. And these." I pushed the fabricated bank statements toward her. "These forged documents that you submitted to the bank." The room went completely silent. The smug, tolerant expressions on their faces vanished. Ava's face drained of all color. My mother's jaw dropped. My father's face darkened with rage. "You have no right to have those documents," my father snarled, his voice low and dangerous. "Oh, but I do," I replied, not breaking eye contact. "Or rather, Liam does. He has every right. He's the co-signer. Or should I say, the co-conspirator in a case of federal bank fraud." All eyes snapped to Liam, who shrank back in his chair, unable to look at any of them. "Chloe, don't," Liam whispered, his voice pleading. "Don't what, Liam?" I said, finally turning my gaze to him. "Don't tell the truth? Is that what you want? More lies?" I turned back to my family. "You all lied, every single one of you. You, Ava, laundered money you got from being some rich man's mistress, and you called it a business." Ava gasped, outrage and fear warring on her face. "You," I said, pointing at my parents. "You knew about it. You encouraged it. You helped her hide it. You told me she had a lucrative business. You called me jealous to shut me up." "And you," I said, my voice dropping as I turned back to Liam. "You were the worst of all. You didn't just lie to me. You signed off on her fraud. You put our names, our entire future on the line for her lies. And then you signed this." I picked up the gift letter and held it up. "You signed a legal document telling the bank our life savings were a gift. You made sure I could never get it back." The room was a tinderbox of shock and fury. You wouldn't dare do anything, Ava finally shrieked, finding her voice. You'll ruin the family. You'll ruin me. Ruin you? I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. You did this to yourself. You are the one who ruined this family with your greed and your lies. You committed a crime, Ava. A serious crime. My father stood up. This is blackmail, he boomed. No, I said, standing to meet his gaze. This is not blackmail. This is restitution. I am giving you a choice. A choice you did not give me. I let that sink in. I had them. They were trapped. The power had shifted completely. I was no longer the victim. I was the one in control. Here is what is going to happen, I announced, my voice ringing with authority. I looked directly at Ava. You are going to sell that house, immediately. No, she cried, tears starting to stream down her face. I won't. I love that house. You can't make me. Oh, I can, I said, my voice like ice. And you will. Because if that house is not on the market by the end of this week, I will be making 2 phone calls. The first will be to the fraud investigation department at the bank. I will hand-deliver them this entire file. The second call will be to a certain real estate developer's wife. I have her number. I wonder how she will feel when she learns exactly where her husband's trust fund money has been going. I suspect she will be very, very interested. Ava stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The threat of prison was one thing. The threat of having her source of income cut off and her reputation destroyed was another. My mother let out a horrified sob and put her arm around Ava. You wouldn't, my mother whispered. Try me, I said. I turned my attention back to the group. That's step 1. Here's step 2. When the house sells, the first thing that will happen is the mortgage will be paid off in full, freeing Liam from the co-signature. The second thing that will happen is that the first $75,000 of the proceeds will be wired directly to a new bank account, an account that I will be opening tomorrow, in my name only. I paused, then added, and since I have lost months of interest and suffered a great deal of emotional distress, we'll round that up to $80,000 to cover my legal consultations and my pain and suffering. My father looked like he was going to explode. This is extortion. This is a consequence, I corrected him. This is what happens when you lie and steal from me. You have 2 options. You can either follow my plan, and this all stays within this room, or you can refuse, and we see what the bank's lawyers and a scorned wife have to say. The choice is yours. They were silent, defeated. They knew I had them. They knew I would do it. The part of me they had always relied on, the part that would buckle to keep the peace, was gone. They were looking at a stranger. Then I delivered my final blow. I turned to my husband. He was still huddled in the chair, silent, broken. And you, Liam, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. Our part in this is very simple. As soon as that $80,000 is confirmed in my new account, you are going to pack a bag. You and I are finished. We are getting a divorce. He finally looked at me, his eyes swimming with tears. Chloe, no, he begged, his voice cracking. Please, I love you. I made a terrible mistake. I was weak. Please don't do this. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash, Liam, I said, my voice flat and final. This was not a mistake. This was a series of choices. You chose to lie to me. You chose to steal from me. You chose to sign that application. You chose them over us, over and over again. And choices have consequences. Your consequence is that you have lost me. You wanted to be part of their family so badly? Now you can be. You can go live with them. I stood there looking at the wreckage of my family. Ava was sobbing hysterically. My mother was trying to comfort her while glaring at me with pure hatred. My father was staring at the floor, his face a mask of fury and defeat. And Liam was just broken. I felt nothing. No pity, no sadness, just a vast, empty sense of release. The storm had finally broken, and I was the only one left standing. The aftermath was exactly as I had dictated. There was no more argument, no more negotiation. The fear of exposure was a powerful motivator. My father, the pragmatist, took control. He knew I held all the cards, and he knew I would play them without hesitation. He forced a crying, protesting Ava to call a real estate agent the very next day. The house was put on the market at a competitive price to ensure a quick sale. In the current market, it was under contract within a week. The closing was scheduled for 30 days later. During that month, I lived in a state of suspended animation. Liam moved into the guest room. We were roommates, not husband and wife. The silence in our apartment was heavy with unspoken words and broken promises. He tried to talk to me a few times. He would start with, "Chloe, can we just—" But I would cut him off. "There is nothing to talk about, Liam," I would say, my voice flat. "We will talk after the money is in my account." I did not want to hear his apologies. Apologies were words, and I was done with words. I had learned that words from my family and from my husband were meaningless. They were tools for manipulation, not communication. I was only interested in actions now. My parents did not call me. I was, for all intents and purposes, excommunicated. I knew from our cousin Jenna that their house was a place of misery. Ava was apparently a wreck, lashing out at everyone and blaming them for her predicament. She refused to accept any responsibility. In her mind, I was the villain who had stolen her dream house. My parents were caught between their guilt and their fury at me. I did not care. Their drama was no longer my problem. I spent my evenings looking at real estate listings for small, modest houses in quiet neighborhoods. Houses that I could afford on my own. The thought of having a space that was entirely mine, a place where I was not beholden to anyone, was a powerful comfort. The day of the closing arrived. I had given my father the wiring instructions for my new personal bank account. I had spent the morning compulsively refreshing my online banking page. Around 2 in the afternoon, it appeared. A wire transfer. The amount was exactly $80,000. I stared at the number on the screen. It was not a symbol of a shared dream anymore. It was a symbol of my independence. It was the price of my freedom. I walked out of my bedroom and into the living room. Liam was sitting on the couch, staring into space. He looked up as I entered. "It's done," I said. "The money is in my account." He nodded slowly. His face was etched with exhaustion and despair. "So what now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Now," I said, "you pack your bags, as we agreed." He flinched as if I had struck him. "Chloe, please," he whispered. "Can't we even talk about this? Can't we try to fix it? I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I looked at him, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of the old affection I used to have for him. I saw the man I had loved, lost and terrified. But it was buried under too many layers of betrayal. The foundation was gone. There was nothing left to build on. "There is nothing to fix, Liam," I said, and my voice was softer than it had been in weeks, but it was also more final. "You did not just make a mistake. You revealed who you are. When you were faced with a choice between my trust and their approval, you chose them. When you were faced with a choice between our future and their desires, you chose them. I will never be able to unsee that. I will never be able to trust you again. And I will not live my life with a man I cannot trust." Tears welled up in his eyes and began to stream down his face. "But I love you," he choked out. "I know," I said, "and that's the saddest part. You love me, but you still chose to betray me. That's not a love I can live with." He did not argue anymore. He seemed to finally understand that it was truly over. He stood up and walked into the guest room. An hour later, he came out with 2 suitcases. He did not look at me as he walked to the door. With his hand on the doorknob, he paused. "Where will I go?" he asked, his voice small. "I imagine you'll go to them," I said. "They're your family now." He opened the door and left, closing it softly behind him. The click of the latch echoed in the silent apartment. I was alone, and for the first time in a month, I could breathe. The divorce was quick and surprisingly clean. Sarah was brilliant. She used the evidence of the financial misconduct, the unauthorized $75,000 transfer documented as a gift, to argue for an unequal division of our remaining assets. Liam, on the advice of his own shell-shocked lawyer, did not fight it. He just wanted it to be over. In the end, I walked away with the $80,000, the majority of our remaining shared assets, and my freedom. Liam was left with his suitcases, his guilt, and the family that had used him as a pawn. I used the money to buy a house. It was not a big house. It was a small 2-bedroom bungalow on a quiet street with a big oak tree in the front yard. It was perfect. The day I got the keys, I walked through the empty rooms and felt a sense of peace I had not felt in years. Every wall, every floorboard was mine. It was a home built not on a shared dream, but on my own strength and resilience. A few months after I had moved in, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me press the green button. Hello? It was my mother. Her voice was thick with tears. Chloe, it's me. I was silent. I did not know what to say to her. I was just calling to see how you are, she said, her voice wavering. We miss you. I still said nothing. It's been so hard, she continued, her voice breaking into a sob. Ava is so depressed. She had to move back home. She barely leaves her room. And Liam, he calls all the time. He's staying with your father and me. He misses you terribly, Chloe. He's just devastated. I listened to her cry. A year ago, this sound would have broken my heart. It would have made me feel guilty. It would have made me want to fix everything. But now I felt nothing. It was just noise. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive them? She pleaded. To forgive him? Everyone makes mistakes. We are still your family, no matter what. I finally found my voice. It was calm and steady. No, Mom, I said. You stopped being my family on the day you all decided that my future was a fair price to pay for Ava's happiness. You are not my family anymore. I could hear her sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. I have a new family now, I continued, my voice clear and strong. It's me, and I am finally taking care of her. Before she could reply, before she could launch into another round of guilt or pleading, I ended the call. I blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's number and Ava's. I did not do it with anger. I did it with a quiet sense of finality. It was like closing a door on a room that was no longer part of my house. I sat there in the quiet of my own living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. The silence was not lonely. It was not empty. It was peaceful. It was the sound of victory. It was the sound of a life that was entirely my own. They had tried to make me small, to make my dreams secondary to theirs. They had tried to take my future. But they had failed. They were the ones left with nothing. No house, no trust, no respect. They were trapped together in a prison of their own making, drowning in resentment and regret. And me? I was free. They had finally learned what it feels like to be powerless, and I had finally learned what it feels like to be home.